In just 11 minutes, a 16-year-old boy walked into the largest casino on the Las Vegas Strip and broke something the industry believed couldn't be broken. June 14th, 2021, 10:43 p.m., Las Vegas Strip, Nevada. The surveillance footage tells the story first. A slow pan across the neon corridor, blue, red, violet light bleeding into the marble floor, a rotating glass door, and in its reflection, the faint silhouette of a small figure in a gray hoodie. No swagger, no hesitation, just a steady, almost mechanical stride toward the gaming floor. 20 seconds later, a silent alert hit the casino's internal monitoring system. Anomaly pattern detected. Someone, seated at table 19, had just opened a streak that shouldn't exist. 19 wins, back to back. Across multiple dealers, across multiple reshuffles. The probability? 1 in 47 million. And yet, nothing about the footage showed panic, excitement, or even interest. No hidden devices. No suspicious gestures. No accomplices hovering nearby. Every camera in the building had a clean angle on it. Nothing ahead, front, back, and overhead. And still, no one could explain what they were seeing, because the boy didn't cheat. He didn't hack the system. He didn't manipulate anyone. He simply sat down and began to win. A sequence so precise, so controlled, that the casino's own security team would later describe it as algorithmic. But the data only captured the surface. The truth, the real anomaly, came minutes later. And what happened next changed everything. He was 16, born in a quiet corner of Clark County, Nevada, less than a 40-minute drive from the Strip, but a world away from its noise and money. His parents worked alternating night shifts at a distribution warehouse off Interstate 15. Low wages, long hours, a routine built around survival, not ambition. Evan grew up in the silence between those shifts, a small apartment lit by a single fluorescent tube humming at 120 hertz, the way most low-cost fixtures in Nevada do. Maybe that was where his mind learned to hear patterns the rest of us ignore. He rarely spoke. Teachers described him as present, but elsewhere. He wasn't shy, he wasn't anxious. He was simply watching, and the watching started early. At 8 years old, he could tell when the crosswalk signal outside their building would change, down to the second. The city maintained that system on a fixed cycle of 68 seconds per loop, and Evan memorized every one.
So it's a good place to hide.
At 10, he startled his mother by finishing her sentences. Not because he knew the words, but because he noticed the tiny shift in her shoulders before she breathed in. By 13, he could predict which neighbor would knock on their door, just by hearing the rhythm of footsteps in the hallway. None of this made him popular. He struggled in school, grades low, group projects worse.
Did you hear that?
Kids called him glitchy because he blinked less, spoke less, and stared longer than they were comfortable with. He never fought back, but something hardened inside him. A quiet understanding that the world didn't care about people who didn't fit. Then, one night in February 2020, everything shifted. His father asked him to tag along on a late pickup at a small casino on Tropicana Avenue. Evan waited in the lobby while his father retrieved paperwork in the back. That's when he saw it for the first time. Not the lights, not the chaos, but the rhythm, a pulse running under the noise, built from human habits and tiny delays. A dealer tapping chips at a repeating interval. A cocktail server switching trays with a predictable hesitation. A security guard scanning the floor in the exact same pattern every 34 seconds. Most people saw randomness. Evan saw a system, a living one, breathing in loops and micro loops, all slightly imperfect. And for the first time in his life, the world didn't feel overwhelming. It felt readable. That single night planted a seed, a feeling he couldn't name yet, a question forming quietly in the back of his mind. If everything had a rhythm, could anything be predicted? And that was the first moment the system, the one no one else could see, began to pull him in. And from that point on, it never let him go. Beneath the neon noise of the Strip, casinos are built like fortresses, not of concrete or steel, but of surveillance. The property Evan would later walk into, a flagship resort on South Las Vegas Boulevard, operates with an average of 1,200 active cameras, each streaming at 30 frames per second, feeding into a behavioral analysis system designed after 2018's industry shift toward real-time anomaly detection. Every table, every aisle, every hand movement, tracked, logged, scored. Dealers trained for months, rehearsed motions, regulated posture, strict timing protocols meant to erase any hint of pattern. In theory, the floor is a perfect engine, random, fast, and unbreakable. But randomness isn't actually random. People fatigue after 40 to 45 minutes on shift. A wrist slows, a shoulder drops. Micro delays appear, too small for the human eye, but consistent enough for someone who spends his life watching rhythm. VIP players skew the tempo. They clap louder, bet heavier, force dealers to speed up or slow down, breaking the intended pace. Even the cameras, the backbone of casino security, refresh on cycles. Most older dome units pause for a few frames every 120 seconds to recalibrate exposure under neon light, a gap so tiny no one notices. Unless they're looking for it. These cracks weren't technical failures, they were human ones. Evan saw them long before he ever sat at the table. He noticed the 0.2-second hesitation when a tired dealer gathers chips. He saw that a specific overhead camera dipped into a 3-second blind window during its refresh cycle. He realized players near the bar adjusted their bets in sync with the baseline, 9, a track that ran at 128 beats per minute, creating subconscious rhythm. And he caught the pattern in shift changes, a slight mismatch between dealers that created a predictable stumble in the game's flow. To everyone else, the floor looked chaotic, bright, loud, overwhelming. To Evan, it looked structured, predictable, built on loops. People watched the cards, the chips, the rules. He watched the people. And in systems run by people, perfection doesn't exist. Because even the strongest fortress, even one guarded by cameras, algorithms, and 20 years of security doctrine, eventually reveals a fault line. And every fortress has a crack. For 7 months, Evan moved through the smaller casinos scattered around East Tropicana and Boulder Highway. Places locals visit where the lighting is dimmer, the security lighter, and the rhythms easier to see. He never played, he only watched. He stood at the railings for hours, tracking movements the way someone else might track constellations. Every minute, he wrote something down. Short marks in a pocket notebook, dealer rotations, chip hand delays, traffic on the floor, even the patterns of slot machine sounds rising and falling on loops of 82 seconds, a cycle many casinos in Nevada inherited from older sound systems installed in the early 2000s. It wasn't luck he was after, it was signal buried inside noise. Over time, 4 models took shape. 4 ways a human-driven system could betray itself: human rhythm, the microscopic hesitation in a dealer's wrist, the drift in focus when fatigue set in at the 40-minute mark, documented consistently across multiple shifts.
Let's look at the difference between the energetic
how a crowded
and the
table
subdued.
speeds up, how a quiet one slows down, how human energy, excitement, fear, boredom subtly alters the tempo of a game meant to be mechanical. Timing, the tiny mismatches between scheduled rotations and real human movement. A shift change that should take 30 seconds consistently taking 34. A button press landing just off the intended beat. Environment, light flicker, music tempo. A cocktail tray clattering every time a server passed a certain column. Details most people filter out, but not Evan. He ran each model by hand, line by line, loop by loop. At first, his predictions held only 63% accuracy, too low to mean anything. He adjusted the timing inputs, retested 71%, still flawed. He re-examined the human patterns, tightening his definitions of delay and distraction. 80%. Closer, not perfect. Then, after 3 more weeks of calibration, he reached 92% accuracy across mock scenarios in 3 different casinos. It wasn't enough to win in any guaranteed sense. Nothing in human systems ever is. But it was enough for him to trust the rhythm he had built. And he did it without a laptop, without a phone, without any device that could store a single frame of video. Evan didn't need electronics. He needed only a pen. He drew table layouts from memory, clean lines, small arrows, notes written in tight handwriting that looked more like engineering diagrams than anything a 16-year-old should be producing. Night after night, he sat at the kitchen table while his parents slept, lit only by the hum of a 4,100K fluorescent bulb, sketching the same patterns over and over until they turned into instinct. He wasn't driven by greed. He wasn't chasing money. He was chasing comprehension, the thrill of understanding something others couldn't see, alone, but never lost, detached, but never confused, curious in a way that bordered on obsession, yet carried a strange clarity. And when the final piece clicked, when the cycles matched, when the rhythms aligned, Evan put his pen down for the first time in months, a quiet breath, a still moment, a page filled with perfect loops. And now, everything was ready. 22:43 p.m. He enters through the main doors. The casino floor hits him with its usual assault. Neon reflections across polished marble, a constant 72 decibel hum of machines, the steady pulse of slot jingles running on a loop. But Evan isn't overwhelmed. He filters it, separates signal from noise. From the overhead dome cam, he looks small, 16, a gray hoodie, hands loose at his sides, a posture without tension, as if he's walking into a library, not the largest casino on the strip. He doesn't head to a table. Not yet. 22:51 p.m. He stops behind table 19. 17 seconds. That's all. His eyes stay fixed, not on the cards, but on the dealer's hands. The dealer performs 44 motions per minute, the average rate for a standard Las Vegas blackjack table. But today, there's a hitch, a subtle drag on the downstroke, a delay too small for players to notice, but not too small for him. He sits. 22:57 p.m. His first win is clean, unremarkable on camera, no tells. No excitement. He doesn't smile, doesn't lean forward. He keeps his back straight, breathing steady, 7 breaths per minute, a rate far below the floor average. 23:07 p.m. He wins his third round. The table's energy shifts. Players glance at him, not suspicious, just curious. A kid winning 3 in a row isn't impossible, just unlikely. But the surveillance suite sees something else, a pattern forming. 23:15 p.m., a silent alert fires through the internal system. Anomaly detected. Win rate trending beyond statistical expectation. To the cameras, he still looks calm. He blinks less than most players. His hands stay still between rounds, an unusual behavior on a floor built on nervous gestures. Security doesn't move yet. The system needs more time, more data. 23:23 p.m. The dealer rotation begins, a fresh shift, synced to the casino's regulated schedule. But the timing is off by a few seconds, a misalignment only someone tracking rhythm would notice. Before the new dealer sits, Evan stands, smooth, unhurried, almost absent-minded. He leaves the table without a word. 23:31 p.m. He reaches table 14, one of the few corners where an older dome camera refreshes every 120 seconds, creating a 3-second blind dip as it recalibrates to the glare of shifting LED panels. He sits exactly as the blind cycle begins. To the surveillance feed, his movement smears for a moment, not visible, just slightly out of sync. A harmless glitch, the kind every casino sees dozens of times a night. And there, in the dim violet wash of the corner lights, he starts again. 23:35 p.m., 6 more wins. Effortless, quiet, consistent enough to push the anomaly score even higher. Players around him grin, one pats his shoulder. But Evan doesn't react. No joy, no rush of adrenaline, just focus. Absolute and unbroken, locked onto the invisible flow he's been studying for months. This is not a boy gambling. This is a boy reading a system, the same way someone else reads music or weather. 23:39 p.m. The behavioral AI flags him, not for cheating, not for suspicious movement, but for emotional flatline, a profile showing near zero variance across multiple stress indicators. Uncommon for a player his age, uncommon for anyone. And at that exact moment, as the alert flashes across the monitoring screen, something shifts. A tiny break in the sequence, a pivot the system didn't expect, and neither did he. And then, the unexpected happened. 23:39 p.m. The system makes its decision. A red banner slides across the top of the surveillance dashboard, a behavioral tag used only in rare cases, 0 emotion profile. A classification reserved for players who show no physiological swing under stress, not anxiety, not excitement, not even micro-reactions. For a casino that tracks thousands of faces a night, a signal like that stands out. Within 60 seconds, 2 floor supervisors redirect their patrol, moving along the carpet at an average pace of 42 feet per minute, calm, deliberate, trained not to draw attention. Evan doesn't notice them, or if he does, he doesn't show it. He sits with the same stillness he carried since the moment he walked in. The supervisors approach from his left flank.
This is an unusual
not
situation.
Aggressive, just procedural. One leans in, a quiet greeting, a request for identification. Standard protocol after an anomaly flag. Evan reaches for his pocket. The supervisor waits until the ID slides into view under the neon wash. A date of birth stamped clearly on the lower corner. He's 16, and the air shifts. Not dramatically, not loud, just a subtle tightening of posture, the kind trained staff make when something doesn't fit the rules. Minors aren't allowed on the gaming floor, not even to watch, especially not at this hour. But the point of confusion isn't his age, it's the question none of them can answer. How did he get in undetected? The doors use automated age verification sensors, secondary checks by roaming staff, layers of security designed for high-traffic casinos on the Strip, systems that rarely fail. Yet, somehow, he passed every layer without force, without help, without any irregular movement in the entry logs. Evan doesn't resist when they ask him to stand. He doesn't argue. He simply rises, light, controlled, and follows the supervisor toward the restricted hallway near the north exit. A camera above captures a final moment. As he walks, Evan tilts his head upward, drawn toward the ceiling. A row of neon bars flickers in a repeating cycle, a refresh pulse of 110 milliseconds, common in older lighting units exposed to constant electrical load. He watches it, not fearfully, not nervously, more like recognition, as if he's tracking the rhythm again, even now. The supervisors guide him forward, a brief conversation, a quiet escort, no conflict, just a child removed from a room where he shouldn't have been. On the footage, he passes out of frame, small, calm, a ghost moving through violet light. And for a moment, the system loses him. Somehow, he survived the moment. The escort out of the casino was quiet. No resistance, no raised voices. Just a miner walking through a side corridor under the soft glow of 4,100K fluorescent light, guided by 2 supervisors who followed protocol down to the step. Outside, the desert air sat at 83 degrees Fahrenheit, a typical June night on the Strip. Evan stepped beyond the security boundary, and that was the end of the incident, at least on paper.
Status report.
Inside the surveillance office, the tone was different. The casino chose to keep the situation internal, not to hide wrongdoing. There wasn't any, but to avoid the media storm that comes whenever a miner crosses a casino floor. They described it later off record as a potential misunderstanding that didn't warrant escalation. Still, an internal report was filed at 12:14 a.m., summarizing the anomaly that triggered the intervention. Subject displays anomaly level pattern recognition, a phrase the industry rarely uses, reserved for cases where behavior drifts far outside normal statistical variance.
Understand.
But the
Thank you
real
for the
disruption
information.
didn't happen inside the building. It happened after. Evan never returned home that night. His father expected to hear the apartment door open around the usual hour, sometime after midnight, but the hallway stayed silent. Morning came, then another. After 72 hours, his family contacted local authorities to report him missing. A standard welfare check began. Interviews, neighborhood canvassing, searches of transit footage. Nothing suggested a crime. Nothing suggested a struggle. No signs of danger. just absence. And the strangest part, not a single camera in the city recorded him leaving Las Vegas, not on foot, not by bus, not by rideshare. He simply didn't appear again on any system that should have captured him. For investigators, it was a disappearance defined not by chaos, but by the lack of any digital footprint at all, a gap in the data, a missing beat in a city that tracks everything. But the story wasn't over. 3 weeks after Evan vanished, another alert surfaced, this time 180 miles north, in a mid-sized casino on the outskirts of Reno. A pattern anomaly, same rhythm, same timing, same statistical fingerprint. The surveillance footage was grainy, recorded on an older 720p dome unit installed in 2012. The figure in the frame was blurred, shaped by distance and low exposure. No face, no clear profile, only the cadence of his movements, familiar in a way the analysts couldn't explain. Word spread quietly among staff. Some insisted he'd been recruited, quietly absorbed into a corporate security division, paid not to play but to watch. Others believed he'd found a larger flaw, a structural rhythm buried deeper in casino operations. And a few said he wasn't chasing money at all. He was proving a point, that no system built by humans can ever be truly random. One fragment of digital evidence fueled the speculation. A single line buried in a maintenance log, time-stamped 2:14 a.m., the night of the Reno anomaly. Flow never lies. No signature, no source, just those 3 words. And it left investigators and anyone who heard his story with a single question. If a 16-year-old could see through a system designed to be perfect, how many other glitches are still hiding in the neon? Or maybe the truth disappeared with him.